Welcome to the podcast, where street smart, business smart, all kinds of smart people share their insights into the world of marketing, career journeys, and personal growth. So sit back and prepare to get enlightened with your host, Adam Posner.
Welcome to the podcast live. It is the 11th day of March in the year 2020. I'm joined by two of my favorite people, not just on the platform, but in life, Jordan Paris and Hala Taha, two exceptional human beings who are incredible podcasters. I've had the privilege of having them both on my show, The Podcast. I've been on Jordan's show, and I'm patiently waiting for my invite from Hala to come in the mail. I hear that she mails physical invitations. It's kind of like a wedding invitation. When you're invited onto her show, it kind of unfolds like an origami flower. These little angels and butterflies come out of it, and they welcome you onto a show. I kid. But these two, I've had the incredible privilege to be able to learn from both of them, both near and far, watching how they have developed their shows, how they create their audiences, how they promote them, and technically how they do it. So I thought it'd be awesome today to use this LinkedIn Live platform to bring experts together and talk about their shows and some of the early challenges, some of the early successes, and some of their keys to success. The first thing that I really want to talk about is I hear everyone saying that, giving advice, saying that everybody, if you have an inkling of doing a podcast, should do a podcast, should try it. Hala, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think podcasts?
Sorry, I'm trying to promote your show. That's why I'm looking down.
Yeah. So like when people say like everybody should have a podcast, everybody should do a podcast. I mean, would you give the same guidance, or are there certain questions that you would ask yourself first before saying, you know what, I'm going to try a podcast?
I definitely think that if you have something. Oh, sorry.
So for everyone that doesn't know, LinkedIn has a delay on the LinkedIn line.
Okay. So I would definitely say that starting a podcast, it's not too late. So if you do want to start a podcast, it's definitely not too late. I remember 2 years ago, everybody was telling me that the podcast market was too saturated. Don't start a podcast. And look at me now. I'm a top 10 self-improvement podcast with thousands of downloads each episode. So it's not true. There's always room for everyone. We live in a world of abundance. And so I really feel that way, that anybody can be a podcaster. The thing is what are your reasons? You have to have the right reasons. So do you want to learn from someone? Do you want to learn from people who you otherwise wouldn't be able to talk to? That's one of my main drivers. So all these people that I talk to, like for instance, I interviewed Jordan Harbinger. He's literally my podcasting idol. And I got to ask him questions that I was truly interested in, wanted to learn from him. Same with like Robert Greene. He's my favorite author. I had him on the show and I got to actually talk to somebody who I've been reading his book since I was like 12 years old. So it's really cool when you have the right reasons. If you also are an expert and you want to share your advice, I think it works. If you're just trying to like drive people to a product, or if it's just like a sales motive, like you're not going to do well. If you don't have time to do it consistently or with quality, you're not going to do well. If you don't have time to promote your podcast, you're not going to do well. So I think that you need to have the right motives, and then you also need to have the time and the willingness to put in the work, because it is a lot of work. It's not as easy as everybody thinks.
Yeah. And we're going to talk about the work that goes into it in a little bit. Jordan, what's your take on this?
I second everything that Hala said. Plus, if you're going to, if money is one of your main concerns going into it, and you don't have a built-in audience like Tim Ferriss, who had 2-3 New York Times bestselling books under his belt when he decided to start a podcast, right? It's a very different thing, and that's not his main moneymaker, but it makes him some money because he's got ads. But if you're like, if all you're concerned, like, whoa, what's my ROI here? Like obviously the other thing going on is like, you're pretty much saying with that, I'm not actually going to enjoy this. And like I'm just doing this for like an exchange of money. Like you're better off just going to like find another way to make money, because it is a longer road. Now there are, there are a couple of different purposes with podcasts, like where you can really enjoy it. Like, you're a really curious guy like I am, but then there's also like, you can create a podcast with an explicit business purpose. How do you do that? Well, you interview you interview your ideal clients. You build relationships with your ideal clients, and then over when the time is right, maybe a collaboration occurs, but you just interview your ideal clients in mass. It's not really a show that's like, going to get 20,000 downloads per episode, but for a driver of your business, there is definitely room to have a podcast
super niche.
solely as that's super niche as like a driver of business. And I could cite examples all day. Like, say for me, I started the show Trending Up. It's marketing, interviewing, CMOs and CEOs. And why did I start that show? Well, I'm like the salesman for my marketing and production agency for podcasters. And what better than to interview the CMOs and CEOs of big companies, build relationships with them. So that's why I'm doing that. Let's say a client, John Bates, he executivespeakingsuccess.com. He's also my speaking coach for this TED Talk, which might be canceled.
I was just going to say, is that canceled yet?
It's being postponed, not canceled.
Postponing is fine.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't care. Story. Yeah. But, John, so, he charges $15,000 a client. And so what's he going to do? He's going to interview. He's starting a podcast right now, interviewing his ideal clients to, just build relationships with his ideal clients. And I think it's the best way to do it, as opposed to like just sliding in like DMs and going for a cold pitch. I think a podcast can really be like a good way to do this.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and I've been talking about this a lot. And first, a couple of quick points here. I keep going back to something Jordan said to me on, I think I was on one of my earlier episodes, and he kind of gave me some guidance early on. He said a couple things. One, he said if you stop enjoying it, or if you don't enjoy it, just stop. There's no point to it. But the other important thing was, you have to push yourself to episode 50. Get to episode 50, stop, evaluate, see where you're going. And I kind of like, back then when I'm on episode 3 or 4, I'm like, holy crap, like I can't even look at 50. And now I'm already in my mid 70s, and you guys are obviously way past that and everything. But it's like, you have to go through the process. You have to put in the work. And there is so much work involved, and we'll break that down in a little bit. But just to kind of wrap up the purpose of the podcast chat here, one incredible thing that I found is that from a business development perspective, I have a much easier time going after potential targets that I think are going to be engaging and say, hey, will you come on my show for an hour and talk shop with me, versus taking a 15-minute cold call. It's absolutely incredible. And then you build up this rapport. And I've seen this incredible halo effect where now I have doors opening up for me. They're recommending their other contemporaries in my world, in my field, that I want to talk to, and say, hey, listen, I just had a great episode with Adam. He really digs in. We talk shop there. It's a great flow. And then they're sharing it. And then we have an open dialogue where now I'm literally texting with them instead of emailing them, which is incredible. Exactly. So you get to break. I mean, it's rocket science, but you can't do this out of the gate. It doesn't happen immediately. I mean, one of the things that I wouldn't say was a mistake for me, because there's different worlds to it. Like going back to it, I maybe would have liked to have 10, 15 episodes in the can ready to go before I launched. I went 1 and then I did 2. And it took me a while until December of last year, where now I have about 20 in the queue and I don't feel as pressured as far as recording them. But everybody's cadence is a little bit different. Jordan, tell us a little bit about, if you're open to it, like, what's your recording structure cadence? Do you like record 1 week and then put it out a couple weeks later? Because I think this is important for people to understand the amount of time and effort that goes into these things.
Yeah, I love talking about this, and not enough people ask me about this, but I stay between 2 and 3 months ahead at any given point. Episodes that I record today, they come out, 2-3 months from now. Now, of course, let's say, Hala and I interviewed the same guest in the past week, Ryan Serhant of $1 Million Listing. I really like Ryan. I watched the show. I moved that up as high as I can, which ends up being 5 weeks. I literally could, these people have been waiting over 3 months, so I can't move it up too much. So let's say, Robert Greene, I know we've been talking about it forever. Finally,
you got the interview
for end of March. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's going to be like a 5-weeker. Dean Graziosi, I had a good little opening. So that's going to be 3 weeks. Grant.
I'm working on him. I guess if I applaud his engagement post on LinkedIn and send him an engagement gift anniversary, I like it.
Yeah.
Is that what you did to get him? He was supposed to come on my show, and then he went unresponsive, so I never got him. Hopefully that doesn't happen to you.
I just emailed, and it's, once people are locked into like the assistant booked on my calendar, and once they're on that, they get reminder after reminder and text and all email and there's really no escaping once you're
once you fill out the Jordan form.
once you're in that, I want to put a pin in that for a second too.
Yeah, I don't want to lose our thread though of cadence. So, but continue.
And I want to hear Hala's point on that too.
Well,
sorry, Jordan. Did you not finish it?
Well,
Jordan. Just take up the whole interview.
I didn't talk for the first 6 minutes. Let's be fair here. Okay.
Go ahead.
But okay, so I'm almost done. So I record one per week usually on Monday. Now I will, if I have to. There ends up having to be reschedulings every now and then, which happened last week. So I'm recording with this person that was supposed to be last week, recording with him on Friday. So I'm doing 2 per week. It's not a big deal. It doesn't really stress me. If I really, really have to, I've done it maybe 3 or 4 times. I'll do 2 per day. That's definitely a little bit nerve-wracking in terms of getting the adequate preparation in for both, but I've never had a big problem with it, and it's never really resulted in a bad interview because of that. But once per week on Mondays, I like to do it on Monday. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I'll use Calendly, and I've got it embedded on a secret page on my website, and
I'll post a link to that shortly for everybody.
I'm always scared of that.
You're going to be booked till 2021. Okay, so let's talk about my recording schedule. I only have 2 episodes in the queue. So I work full time. So it's been pretty hard trying to get episodes ready in the queue. I was doing really well where I had up to 3 or 4 episodes in the queue, but then my dad got sick and I ended up having to cancel a whole bunch of interviews. And so now I'm doubling up each week to make up for it, and so that I can get back to it. Because last week or so, I've been going week to week with my episodes, and it's so stressful when you do it like that. You definitely want to be out of the game so that it's not an issue. But something that I started doing, which actually works really well, is I actually started. Whoa, fancy! I started my podcast with really good episodes. I was in radio before I started a podcast. So unlike most podcasters, their first 20 episodes are really shitty. Mine actually were really good. So the last 2 Mondays, I didn't have a new episode because my dad got sick and all this stuff happened where reschedules and poor audio for some interviews, just unfortunate events. And I had new episode. So I just reposted some of my classics and I called them YAP classics. Yeah. And I got the same amount of downloads as a new episode. So it's all my new listeners went and listened to that. And then I noticed that in general, my downloads went up because everybody started going back to the old episodes. So it was a good strategy for when you don't have an episode to post.
Yeah. I'm doing that too. I have scheduled for episode 199, Mark Manson. I call it remastered. Mark Manson remastered, and it's because he was episode 99, and it's remastered. It'll have, instead of the old intro and outro, it'll have the new.
Oh, cool. So I just did a direct here's the same episode.
No, I'm with Hala there, and it's interesting too. And just to talk about cadence too. I mean, I record a little bit differently because I don't have a dedicated setup here. So just to give everyone, I work in an awesome shared office space here. Here's a little behind the scenes of where the podcast is recorded, to shared office space here in Long Beach. So I got to take my equipment with me and set it up, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So I try to condense as many episodes as possible back to back. And it's a little bit stressful, but I kind of amp myself up for it. So tomorrow, for example, I'm recording 3 episodes back to back from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And
never done that. That's tough.
I get energized from it, but in between each episode, I need to take a break, walk around the room a little bit. I need to have a cup of coffee. I need to refocus too. It works for the most part. There was one time, there was an episode that I felt that I didn't give it my all because the guest, you know how it is. Sometimes guests are a little bit tough and you got to pull teeth sometimes. I'm not going to name the guest.
Oh, I know.
I would never do that. But I felt it pull my energy down, and I kind of had to be a little bit more mindful about doing that in the future. But also scheduling. I mean, it's tough too. I mean, tomorrow I'm interviewing somebody in Australia, and the time difference is brutal.
Oh, yeah.
Plus, the Australia time difference is brutal. I don't have the capabilities to record at home at 9 o'clock at night, which could work for them. So I need to do it at their 7 a.m. and my 4 p.m.,
right?
Which makes it difficult. So you have to kind of work with guests that way. So let's talk a little bit about, guest engagement, because it's a game. Luckily for me, and I feel you guys will kind of smile when I say this, I'm at a point now where I have people coming to me pitching to be on my show, which is an incredible feeling, right?
Yeah.
And we're talking some really nice named guests. Like I'm taking a curve on my show, and I'm moving into some sports, some Olympic athletes, some really cool like human interest stories, kind of pivoting away from the true career part and more into like human growth and all that kind of stuff, and all the mindset fun stuff that everyone else does. But I'm also, and I left because I saw Jordan's post about this a few weeks ago. When people pitch you to be on your show, without giving any context of why they think they would be a good guest on your show, right? Like literally just PR people just sending crap. And I reply back to them. I'm like, why do you think this person would be good for my show? How do you guys handle these emails?
I think this is me and Jordan's like maybe our number one pet peeve. So I don't know if you want to hear a perspective on this, but
we're gonna sound pompous, so apologize. Hala and I have had these conversations.
I don't ask questions.
I don't want to sound like I'm like too good for people or anything like that. Like I think everybody has a lesson to share. I don't think everybody belongs on my podcast.
Yeah.
So it's just that I feel like literally people, they're like, hey, I love the show. By the way, if you need a guest, blah, 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 blah. Like literally
I just have an opening for you.
Every person, like, and it used to not be like that. It used to be people like, oh, I love your show, blah, blah, blah. Now it's I love your show.
They're all the same pitches too.
Yeah. And
Keep still talking, be quiet.
So essentially,
I'm just gonna mute him. How about that?
It gets a little over. Oh my God, Jordan's muted. It just gets a little bit overwhelming because it's like I have a certain strategy for my show. I'm looking for a certain caliber of guest. I'm looking for somebody who is already well known, who is clearly an expert in their field, who I want to interview. Who I want their topic on my show, and then I just really I tend to send those solicits to one of my assistant producers who looks them over, but usually they're not a fit. And we like to be strategic and proactively reach out to our guests. And so, of course, I'm interested in people letting me know they want to be on my show, but it's almost like offensive when I know it means they didn't listen to my show, because if they saw the people who were on my show, they wouldn't ask me to be on it. So it's just like, hey, I'm going to pretend that I love your show and I would like to be a guest. And it's kind of like, okay, great. Well, so does everybody else. And I can only do X amount of shows, and this is my show. And, it's just a little.
And it puts you in a weird position too. And you have to be mindful about telling someone, like, I'm very straightforward with somebody. I either say, hey, listen, I think you'd be a good guest, but I'm in a hiatus right now from recording. Reach out to me in a couple of months. Let's evaluate it. But if someone is a no-go from the beginning, I have to be very mindful about the words that I choose.
Yeah, because they could get really mad.
The public, they could get mad too. And then there are times when people reach back.
Which is why I don't answer.
Yeah,
you just ignore them.
You just don't answer. I usually don't. Lately, I've been not responding. Sometimes I say, hey, I'm going to forward your information to our producers. If I absolutely know that this person is not a fit and hasn't listened to my show and doesn't know anything, I'll be like, hey, I'm not sure if you listened to the show. I have best-selling authors, billionaires, CEOs. I don't think that you're a fit. Thanks for, asking. And I'll just say no, because people need to find the opportunities that are right for them. And they also need to do their research and not just like blatantly ask everybody to be on their podcast.
And is it crappy PR companies that these people are representing? Because literally,
not only it's just like regular people too. Yeah, it's like sometimes I get like 19-year-olds that want to come on the show and like are like literally have never had a job in their life, and they're like,
I can though. I can. I'm 22.
Go ahead, Jordan.
No. I was putting myself in the category of a 19-year-old. But
No,
I
you
guess
have
I
something to share.
I think I was 21 when I was on your show. Yeah. I'm different though, I guess.
You are.
You're
But
you're
go
an
ahead,
old
Jordan.
soul.
Why don't
Anyway.
you tell us about your
Okay.
Yeah,
perspective
what's your
on
what's your
So-
approach to guest outreach when you feel they're in your room?
I used to answer as a fake assistant, Patrick at jordanparis.com. Patrick's my best friend. And I would send a generic reply. Then I like would redirect people like very kindly in like a sentence or two to
Your merchandise page?
No, there's a Facebook group called I'll Guest for That Podcast, and I would just send the link to that, and then I'd be like, here's how how to get on podcast.
I like that.
Let me know how it goes, right?
So there's a value add, right? You're not just saying no to them, but you're giving them a direction, saying, "Hey, you may not be right for my show, but here's a couple of links of other shows that are looking." That's a nice approach.
Yeah. But
Hala
now,
just ghosts them and says, "Get the hell off my show." And I can't. Hala's very great. She's polite. She's awesome.
Now I don't answer because we only have limited energy, man. Like I don't have it for that all the time. I will answer if it's like with my friend Jeremy Ryan Slate's company, Command Your Brand. Like, I'll answer that, and I'll be like,
"Jeremy's cool.
Thank you. I have to pass on this one." And then sometimes people, and then they'll ask like, "Why? What are you looking for?" And I'll just kind of like show them. Like, I have a page with all my past guests and their pictures at.
Do you show my podcast? Do you show my podcast? And they're like, if Adam Posner was on your show, how the hell would you not want me on your show? What the hell are you doing there? Like that was that ruined you, man. See, that set a bad precedent. Once you have me on the show, then
that's why I can't have you on the show, Adam.
I know it's gonna lower your bar incredibly. But I'll be on your show within the next year and a half. You'll see that. Well,
but can I? So when friends like Adam and Adam, you were in the 90s on my show, not 90s like years, but like episodes, like maybe 93 or something. But like I get people like friends asking me all the time, and how do I respond in person? I look at him, I say earn it. Earn it.
Oh, I like that.
But let me tell you why, and I think Hala hit on it a little bit, like why do we decline these people? I don't do this for production's sake and just pumping episode numbers and getting episodes out there. I do this because this is number one, a really, really legit show. Like, you see the past guests, but also I so enjoy it. Why do I so enjoy it? Because I'm so curious. Why am I so curious about these people? Well, because they're people whose books I read, people whose products I use. Those are like people
that interest you, things you
people who things that really interest me that I'm naturally curious about, not something that I have to be like fake curious about.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's
talk about that. Go Hala.
Just one thing. Podcast is an investment. This is an investment of my money. It's an investment of my time. It's an investment of my brain. It's everything. My team.
Yeah. All your energy. It's everything.
So if I just take any random person that wants to come on my show, I'm essentially spending like $5,000 for that. Like, let's say in time, money, team, like everything, whatever, on that episode. For somebody that I don't care about, that I didn't want to interview, it just doesn't make sense. It's like people need to understand that it's not just like a fun thing and I have unlimited time. It's actually something that I put a lot of effort and investment into, and that's why I can't take every interview.
And it's important. I like what Hala said too. I want to underscore.
Yeah, sure.
Everyone has a lesson. Everyone's fascinating when you get to know them, or at least most people are. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I just like to make my job really easy and as fun as possible, and
it's your podcast. It's your podcast.
It's our podcast.
It's yours.
Yeah.
If you had a TV show, would people be like, "Can I come on your TV show?" No, everybody just thinks that they can come on any podcast for some reason.
Yeah,
it's interesting too, because we have that same thing with friends too. When friends ask me, they're like, "Oh, when am I going to be on your show?" And they're like, half kidding, they're half not. And I go back to them and I said, "Listen,
I know.
I just don't." I don't think it's the right fit for the show. So let's talk a little bit, going back to someone starting a podcast too. And it's so awesome because in this day and age, it doesn't take a lot from an equipment perspective to set up a show, but it does take being mindful about the type because you want a good quality product out there. And I learned that recently that my Yeti mic is not the best mic to use because it's not a condenser mic. And I am in the process of purchasing some new equipment. My show sounds perfectly fine. Could it be better? Absolutely. But I'm also working remote too. But you really have to be mindful about the end user experience, right? Making sure that you have a room that's not echoing, that you have good sound quality, because you have to also put yourself in the perspective of who's consuming your content, right? What is that experience for them? But there are some basic things, production-wise and editing. So let's talk a little bit about that, right? Let's talk about someone at home. Do you need to have a studio with thousands of dollars of equipment? No. Do you need to have professional editors? What are some basics? And I know Jordan has a book and some other information online about how to get started. So we're not going to give away all the trade secrets here, but what's a good place to start?
Jordan, do you want to kick it off? I mean, I'll say you want Jordan to kick it off?
I'm just seeing which way my hand goes when I point to the camera.
Okay. Well, you mentioned Yeti. I'm using a Yeti right now. I am with you. I'm getting a new mic. We're all using Yetis. Yeti is a great place to start. A blue Yeti, I think it would be like a good place to start. For me, my show is getting rather big now, and I'm going to upgrade my equipment. Actually, this week, I'm going to spend like $400 on a mic and get something really good. You know what? My audio engineer sent it to me, but I will need to start doing my setup different. It's not going to be a USB mic. It's going to be an XLR that plugs into like a mixer and then into my computer. Yeah, preamp and then into my computer.
I'm going to go get a piece of equipment to show you guys. Be right back.
Sure. Yeah, I'm on that track too. But it's getting back to the Blue Yeti. It's very user friendly for anybody.
Yeah, if you're doing like an online podcast, especially if you're doing an online podcast, you can use. I use Cast, trycast.com. There's also Zencaster. To be honest, I don't really recommend it. And there's multiple different online platforms, and you just plug in your mic. You will need to make sure that your guest has headphones and a mic. When I was first starting, I used to, the people who I first interviewed, like my second and third episodes, they weren't super famous. I did it on cryptocurrency. And so they were just like regular cryptocurrency people in the field. And I ended up shipping them all mics so that we would have quality show, like $20, $30 mics off Amazon, but still so that we had something decent, because I was doing it without that. And it was just like, you can't use a regular computer mic. It doesn't work. So people need to have their equipment. Now that I have like a different caliber of guest, they always have their equipment. It's no issue.
Yeah, let's pause on that for 1 second too. So one of the things that I do, because I learned by trial and error, and I think any podcaster, you have to learn like your process, you have to learn your cadence. I know Jordan's process because I was a guest on his show, so I understand that messaging strategy. And one of the things that I incorporated is a checklist for my guests when I confirm that the day or two before that they're going to be on it. And it sounds so freaking dumb, but so many people, I have to remind them that you're in a good location, that you have a good Wi-Fi connection, that you have a good audio. I tell them I'm recording video. Let's remember that I'm recording audio. What headphones work and what headphones do not work. Do not rely on your computer microphone. I almost canceled a couple of interviews, but they were hard to get guests. And I was like, oh my God, I can't hear crap. What are you saying?
Yeah, I had an interview with Eric Admides, and he's amazing. He's such a great storyteller. He's the founder of WildFit, and he was sorry, I don't know what's going on, why I keep being off center, but basically we did a live stream. And he was using his computer mic and computer speakers. And the episode, I put it up because it was such good content, but I'm so embarrassed by the quality of that episode. It's like the worst quality episode I ever had.
Yeah.
What can you do? At the end of the day, you recorded a conversation. It's audible. So I'm going to put it up, but it's just not something I'm super proud of in terms of quality.
I had one like that recently. I interviewed
tough
someone from Australia. The internet connection was horrible, number one. And number two, using a computer mic. It was Kerwin Ray. I don't know if you know him. He was introduced to me as the Gary V of Australia. And he's like, I became so fascinated with him. And we actually, despite the horrible audio quality and my poor interview skills because of the connection that was just distracting me, we became friends, and we're setting another one up, and I'm going to air.
It's funny how that works too.
But it's like, it's okay, to do like every now and then, the guest it's not going to be a perfect setup. They're not going to have a mic within a mile of them, and it's just not going to.
They could be on the road. They could be traveling for business. They're in their hotel room.
Exactly.
Got to make it work.
Yeah, as long as it's not every episode. Sometimes. It's fine. But, like, and I don't know, Hala, if you mentioned this, but like the means through which we record remote interviews, I know you use TriCast and I use Squadcast. Why do we use those? Well, it records the audio locally instead of like over the internet. Wow. And so it sounds like we're in the same room a lot of the time, even though we're not. So like, we're both using like good mics. It'll sound like we're in the same room. And because I do in-person interviews every now and then, people will ask like, "Oh, is this one in person?" I said, "No."
That's another one.
Yeah.
Go for
I
it.
was just going to say the other value of using not using Skype or Zoom or something like that is that you can get your audio on 2 different files. So while Jordan is talking, I can drink water or I can ruffle my papers or whatever. And it doesn't matter because when we're editing the podcast, I can just mute my track when he's talking. So that's
right. But that's a little bit advanced too. Like if we're, that takes effort, time, and resources to do that if you're not doing it on your own. But if you're a beginning podcaster, there's some simple things. Like Jordan turned me on to Simplecast. I started on Anchor, and I was fine on it. It's a great starting platform. All the pieces that are there, it could link you to all the distribution channels. So you're on, all the majors and a lot of the smaller ones, which I've been finding on a side note, these little niche audiences that use some of these smaller platforms for listening. It's pretty interesting. But Anchor's fine. And then I went over to Simplecast as well. And some of these platforms have built-in tools where you could do a little bit of your own editing. But for me, I'm not an audio editor, nor do I have the time to. And one of the greatest pieces of advice that I received years ago was if there's something that you can't do and you could outsource this for cheaper, then do it. And that's exactly what I do with my podcast. And I have an audio editor. I have somebody that does my graphics. I have somebody that does some of my transcripting and all that kind of stuff too. And finding those resources, but it takes a little bit of trial and error. But, what are your thoughts on basic editing? Do you guys remove the ums, the and, the little bleeps, the blops? Does it really matter? Do people care? Is it worth the time and effort to really edit the crap out of a podcast?
It doesn't. I don't think it matters too much either way. I'm not too picky. I just kind of say things and live with it. And people like the screw ups. I like to leave that stuff in. And it's a very vulnerable thing to do that. Like in the past, I would, with Sirhan the other day, we're like 20 minutes in, and I was like, "Oh, I had another question about that. I forget what it was. I forget what I was going to say." This happens in interviewing sometimes.
All the time.
And he's like looking at me, like smiling, like hoping I pick it up. And I was like, "Oh, yeah. In the past, I would have cut that out every time."
Yeah.
Now it's just like, that's part of it, especially
part of the conversation.
Did you mention that you know me or anything?
What's that?
Did you mention anything?
Oh
about
yeah, I asked about you. He said Hala was great.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, speaking of name dropping, I dropped your name Hala to Jordan, and him and I have been chatting.
Jordan Harbinger.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth a little bit, and something I kind of want to talk about with him, and he's a big podcaster. I mean, he's at the top of the food chain there. And I want to bring up something really interesting. Because I got someone kind of dinged me on this a couple of weeks ago. I put out a post on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, if you love my show and you listen, I would really appreciate leaving a review. It would mean the world to me." And in my opinion, like, you know what? Sometimes you need to remind people because a lot of times people aren't thinking mindfully about it. And some lady started to crap on me for that. She's like, "Why are you asking? You shouldn't have to ask people. Do you think Picasso went out and he asked people to review his artwork?" And I'm like, terrible analogy, but yeah, fine, whatever. And then I see people like Heather Monahan doing it. And then I had Jordan reach out to me talking about his show. And he's like, "Hey, by the way, if you like my show, could you leave a review?" And he did that on a direct message, which gets me to the point of audience growth, which we'll get to in a little bit, that it's on a fan by fan level of growing your audience sometimes and engaging with them. And that's a level of effort. Yeah. But reviews are the lifeblood. And it's not like, we're not talking about like, "Hey, I'm forcing you to like my show." We're not going down that road at all. But it's like, if you genuinely like something, leave a review. Same thing with a restaurant. If you have a favorite restaurant, it helps them to gain more audience. How do you go about engaging your audience on like feedback and ratings and like getting there, like a 360 loop? Like, what are your thoughts on that, Hala?
I usually handle it in the DMs. So I get most of my following is on LinkedIn, And I have a virtual assistant who helps me manage all of my direct messages. And essentially what we typically do is once I get a new connection, she sends them a message that's about my latest episode and a general summary of my podcast. Like, we're about productivity, enhancing influence, the art of side hustles. And our latest episode is Jordan Harbinger, how to build your social capital. Check it out. If you like it, leave a review. Then usually people respond.
I got one of those messages before I was friends with Hala back in the day.
That was probably me copying and pasting it or me using automation myself. Yeah. But anyway, then people either they respond, they say thank you, whatever. I'll remind them at that point. Most of the time, this is actually me. And I'll be like, hey, I hope you enjoyed the show, blah, blah, blah. It reminds them to go listen to it. Then usually they say, oh, I really liked the show. Sometimes they say, can I be a guest? But sometimes they just say, I really like the show. And if they just say that, then we respond and we say, oh, that's so great. If you continue to like the show, would you please write an Apple review? And now we've been giving a direct link to solicit the Apple review. It goes straight to where they would actually review. The problem is that only like 50% of my listeners are Apple users, or there's only a percentage of people who are Apple users, which really sucks because a lot of people listen to the podcast are unable to review on the platform where reviews matter. And the only platform really that like has like any reviews that anybody cares about. Right. So that's my strategy.
Yeah. Well, I got over 200 on Apple. And once I did, I just stopped caring, stopped looking, and I don't even know what it's at. And I will say, like, I've been like, it's probably, I guarantee it's not over 300,
right?
Just because my strategy has been horrible. Like, there hasn't been a strategy since then. Like, I've in that.
What did you do back then, though?
Well, when people would message me with commenting on an episode, I would immediately I'd acknowledge it and I'd immediately ask right then and there, like, oh, can you literally say, like, sometimes if the comment was appropriate enough, like, can you literally copy it? Why is Adobe Flashfire updating? Okay,
copy and paste is a great strategy. They always do it when I say, could you just copy and paste that as an Apple review? And they're always like, sure. And then they literally just copy and paste it.
Yeah. So whenever I got a message, I would do that. But now I don't really do anything. I probably should get back to it, especially hearing.
Yeah, you have 254. I just checked.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's good.
The pace is slow.
What do you mean? That's so good. It's so hard to get.
I'm working on it.
I'm at like 111, and I feel like
27 here, 24. I'm trying to build it up.
Compared to the amount of downloads that I get, it's just so annoying how little reviews I have. Please, everybody, write me a review if you like YAP.
Right. You know what my TED Talk's going to be?
About asking for reviews?
Yo, pull out your phones, search this, go to the bottom.
No, oh, yeah.
That would be, imagine if I got it there. I mean, it would give me like 400 reviews. So
I know.
Or ratings, at least.
So it's interesting too. And I'm working with a consultant to kind of do it. So I'll admit a big mistake that I made. It's always like the plumber who has a broken toilet. Like, I know what I have to do on the back end to optimize my show from a technical perspective when it comes to SEO, when it comes to naming it. In fact, I have a coach that I'm working with, an advisor, who we're talking about renaming my show. And I'm not talking about renaming the podcast of the actual brand of the show, but to make it more searchable friendly. So anybody who's looking on Apple or any of the other platforms, they have no clue what it is. What the hell's a podcast? They look at my weird cartoon face. They're like, what the hell is this crap? I have no idea what it is. But so we're talking about how do you make it more attractive or, searchable. So we're working on things like that on the back end as well. Another piece, let's talk a little technical here that I've not been doing, and I'd love your thoughts. Do you guys transcribe your episodes and put that in?
No.
From an SEO perspective?
I did it for like a few episodes from 120 to 130.
I have no idea what it is. But so we're talking about that.
Sorry, I was just trying to engage, but it's not
working. I'm
having technical issues on that front.
Okay, let me turn up the volume down.
But it's I just didn't really I don't know. It's just not a needle mover. So
it's a waste of time. Transcribing is a waste of time, especially unfortunately, there's lots of different like Temi.com, Rev.com. They're still not perfect. So somebody still needs to go in and edit them, or you can put it up and it's like just not perfect. a big time suck. And so I used to put them on my website. We don't do that anymore. I haven't noticed any difference in my downloads since not doing that.
So let's talk about the website for a minute. And Hala, your recommendation to me, which was interesting, somebody Ashnal, he's on right now, he's probably watching here, reached out to Hala. Hala referred him over to me. He's an awesome kid out of India who's busting his ass and hustling and really trying to make a name for himself. Yeah, he knows both of you guys. So big shout out to him. And he said to me, he's like, let me help you build out this website. And I never put a lot of
it's good.
faith or effort into it. And I said, you know what, let's do this together. It's kind of going to be a side project there. And I look at the metrics on it and it's starting to pick up. It's becoming a destination spot for people for the show. How important are your individual websites for audience engagement, for driving traffic, for downloads? I mean, how much effort should somebody put into developing a specific show website?
I don't think it's important. It's more of a credibility piece. People see my website and they're like, "Whoa, that's legit." That's
the best website ever.
Yeah, I would concentrate more on your show. You could put up like a splash page for your website. Just like get like any WordPress template, one page, do like a splash page, embed like your latest 10 episodes, something like that. But I wouldn't put too much effort in it. People care about the quality of your show, and people aren't going to find your show from a website. They're going to find you from either searching on Google or searching on Apple or like the actual platform. And so you should concentrate more on your actual publishing your podcast and what you put in that description and what you title your podcast and promoting it on social media. Like I probably get like 300 downloads per episode for my website, which like really isn't a lot.
Yeah, that's interesting here. So I want to kind of close this out here, and then I want to move on to a fun little segment. Jordan, what's your number one piece of advice that you would give to anybody starting a podcast?
That's a good question. That's a great question. Wow.
Hala, do you have the answer?
What was the question? What's the best piece of advice for anybody starting a podcast?
Right? If someone came to you and they said, "Hey, Hala, I'm really thinking about starting a podcast. Where should I start?" What question did they ask themselves?
My suggestion would be, like we mentioned earlier, to have episodes in the can and also to get a way to practice. I think a lot of people start a podcast and they don't have the skills necessarily, like the interview skills, the flow skills. They don't realize that they actually need to practice. I think it just depends what you want to do. You could practice in real time and basically your practice episodes actually upload them and just see how they do. Or you can figure out how like you and your friends or find somebody else who is like up and coming to actually practice with. I started a new series where I had some of Jordan's actually on this new series. It's called YAP Snacks. Me and Jordan are like the professional podcasters on there. But then Shiv from my team, he's never been on radio. But I basically had him practice with other people on the team. And he had to do like 10 episodes by himself with the other people before I actually let him go live. So it's important to practice, I think.
And it's so interesting too. I mean, flow is so critical. I mean, I'm not trying to like brag or anything here, but one of the pieces of feedback I get consistently from guests on my show is like, wow, like you really keep it moving. You ask great questions, but you keep the flow moving. And that takes effort because you have to have an arc and you have to prepare and you have to do the work too. Like, for example, on the live here, this is completely freestyle. I have absolutely nothing prepared, as you guys could tell. But on my show, I put a lot of research in, as you guys do. And I know for a fact that you guys put in a lot of effort in the upfront, and it shows. Yeah. It shows in the depth and level of questions of what you ask the guest, but it's also the arc, right? You need to have a story in your show.
There needs
make
to
sure
be
you're taking the listener on a journey. Right. There needs to be a goal at the end. What's that key takeaway?
Yeah.
One of the things that I do is, I have 3 or 4 questions that I always ask guests at the end of every episode because I like to get that perspective, and it adds a little bit of branding and element, of the end of my show here. And I know you guys do the same. Jordan, what's kind of your? I give you a few minutes to think about this.
Well,
but
I have the answer. So it's more on the interview.
That's called delaying, folks.
Because
buying time.
I love interviewing. So if you don't have an interview show or don't want to do an interview show, it doesn't really apply to you. But you have to like actually listen. Here's an example. There's so many hosts, and I'm going to exaggerate here, and I'm probably going to offend too, but so be it.
Do it, man. We're live.
And that's the other thing. Be polarizing. get people to,
bear.
you know, you'll
Poke
be
the
by being
wasp
polarizing, you're gonna be able to find your tribe. You're gonna sort through everyone. You're gonna turn people off. You're gonna turn people on. You're gonna find those raving fans by being polarizing. Don't walk the line. Be neutral all the time. If you're neutral, nobody cares. Nobody's talking about you. Whatever. So ready? Here's the example. You know, Adam's answering a question, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna bomb the World Trade Center tomorrow." And then I say,
Why would you say
what was your mother's name?
I know.
You think Adam just said that? I have to Adam, dude, what are you talking? There's so many interviewers that hear hear something, and then they're like, and they don't even acknowledge it. Like,
it's because you're so worried about what you're gonna say, and you're not listening.
Yes,
I struggle with that. I try my best not to be like that. Random. Sometimes you have nothing good to say, and you're just like, absolutely, that's what you like to say, or you try to just like move it on to the next topic because you don't know how to respond in a meaningful way. But I think it just takes practice, right?
It really does. And I'm sure you guys have seen this too. I love listening to my early shows to where I am now and listening to that progression of how I have grown in my confidence and my ability to interview and my flow, the ability to think quickly on my feet. And that's a byproduct. I found such great confidence in my own off camera, off screen with clients, with candidates in my recruiting world, with friends too. And I think that's an incredible byproduct of the show. So you guys are amazing interviewers. I know firsthand the way you operate, your style. A question that I always love to ask, Hala, who's your influence in the world of broadcast and media as far as who's a great interviewer? Who's someone that you kind of model yourself after, so to speak, or who do you gain influence of, or like, I love that person's style. I love their cadence. I'm going to take little pieces from them, infuse my own style into it.
Great question, buddy.
It is a good question. So like I said, I love Jordan Harbinger. I also like Tim Ballew, Tim Ferriss, Jordan Paris, actually. I swear sometimes I look at Jordan and I think like, oh, I want to do that, or I need to be better at that. So I tend to listen to podcast interviews as I'm researching guests. It's like one of the strategies that I have is I try to just in any of my free time, I go and I listen to their past interviews. And that gives me like a lot of exposure to like random podcasts. And then I try to just like keep thinking about how can I improve? How can I take the best of what they did and make it into mine? So that's what I tend to do.
You come from a radio world too. I mean, you've been around like, Angie Martinez, like
Angie Martinez. Right? Yeah, she's great. She definitely gave me like, you guys both know that I do like so much research, and that kind of stemmed from being at Hot 97. I used to have to do research for her. So
research pays. When you could go on a guest, like I had this one guest on, I'm airing in a couple with quick story here, Alex Eisman, incredible entrepreneur. He was a former professional hockey ref. But doing my research, I learned that he also is an amateur pilot and flying planes. And one of the places that he flies over in Northern California is the destination where him and his wife got married, because he loves to look at it from above. And it took a lot of deep research and digging into his social feeds to understand that. And then I asked him that question, and he's like, dude, that is some deep stuff right there. And that opened up the rest of the interview. Preparation is key. Number one tip.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Then again, there are people that don't prepare. It depends on your style. Larry King, believe it or not, doesn't prepare. He said, why would I read the book? Because then I already know
Jordan Paris, why am I reading your book?
Yeah, I think here's the thing.
What I'm saying, I think
it's important. I think it's important to, it just depends. If I had a podcast on marketing, I would not study the guest because it's all about marketing. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's my expertise.
So that's funny you say that, because with Trending Up, that new marketing podcast, I don't prepare for the guest, but Growth Mindset University, I do.
Because it's different. Because it's like when it's like, so if it's a podcast about podcasting, or a podcast about LinkedIn, or a podcast about marketing, then I don't need to prepare because I know everything and I could just go off the top of my head. If it's a podcast about like,
the person,
I don't know, sleep, I'm not a sleep psychologist, so I need to study. And it's important not only to read their material, it's important to read other people's material around the topic, so that you're just like knowledgeable about the topic in general and not just like regurgitating the book.
Yeah. And that's really important too. And I want to go back to something interesting. Early on, I worked with a great media coach on my podcasting style and interview techniques and everything. And she said something important. I want to go back to Jordan's thing about not being neutral. And it's about, how do you stand out? and not walking the, not being on that line. It's about poking the bear and being able to ask questions where you're not insulting a guest, because that's the last thing you want to do, right? But how do you ask them a question where it's thought-provoking enough? It might be borderline controversial, but that's how you're going to stand out. So I really try to make it a point to ask a curveball question or a knuckleball. I like to have more than one pitch. If I'm using a baseball analogy, I'm not just throwing freaking softballs or fastballs down the middle at you. You're going to get a curveball. You're going to get a knuckleball. I'm going to throw a changeup in there.
I'm going to run something by you. As I was falling asleep last night, you have these thoughts.
You definitely have at least 2 teddy bears on either side of you, and that little nightcap from the cartoons with the little pom-pom on it and the little buttoned up pajamas.
But so I'm thinking about with Robert Greene, he's 60 years old. He just had a stroke, and he writes about I just finished his 600-page mammoth of a book, The Laws of Human Nature. It took me 6 months to read. And the last chapter is about death. So I was going to ask him, how much longer? Tell me if this question's too much, but because I'm no stranger to asking questions with teeth. But I was going to ask, how much longer do you think you have to live, and how is that affecting, how you live today?
I like it.
I don't think you should say how much longer do you have to live. I think that's a little.
What's left on your clock?
Because he had a stroke and everything, so that's kind of messed up to say. I would say something more along the lines of life is as you know, our time here is limited. And then go into that question. I forgot what your question was,
sure.
But
yeah.
I mean, what would be the benefit of asking him how long you have?
And that's something you have to consider too. But anyway, I do want to answer the question though, who are the interviewers that I like to study? And I like Jordan Harbinger, but I don't look to him for that specifically for his interview style, because it's just a fundamentally different show. He edits, or not he, Jason, his producer, edits so heavily that they mix and match, and they take something from the beginning of the interview, put it in the end. It's just not comparable. I'm not it's just not me. I can't really learn too much from that. But I like Larry King. I like Josh Peck from Drake and Josh. He's oh, well, that's interesting.
I don't listen to
Drake and Josh, the cultural phenomenon on Nickelodeon. Anyway, Josh Peck now has a podcast, and it's really good, and I like his.
Is it not in my demo? Am I the old man here?
It's called Curious with Josh Peck. But yeah, Joe Rogan, Lewis Howes. Yeah, I don't know what happened to Hala.
I'm a Howard Stern guy. Hala back. Where are you at there? We'll get to her in a minute, because I want to wrap this. I want to talk about game here. Let's give some quick shout outs here, because I usually do that a little bit earlier in the live show. But we have Adam Sinkus, we have Anshul who's on, we have Jordan Keese is on, Dave Markowitz, how you doing, man? Darren Evans, everyone checking in. We appreciate everybody. Bill, my man Bill, left the best freaking review on my show the other day. I had to blast that out there. Philip, what's happening there? All good stuff there. Jordan, do you get trolls on your show or trolls in your feed? How do you handle trolls? Because I literally got a troll. This is a good one. I'm going to read this one live on air because it's absolutely ridiculous.
I love it.
This is freaking great. Here we go. This is real time here. I'm going to hide her name because we'll talk about it afterwards.
I'll tell you afterwards how I respond. Yeah.
All right. So I reached out to her. Somehow I'm connected with her. No, I'm not connected with her. So we're not friends on LinkedIn. I reached out to her on August 18th, 2016 in my recruiting days. She writes me today during this. She goes, "You are truly," I love this. This made me smile. "You are truly the most annoying person on LinkedIn. I have turned off every notification from this app and still somehow get notified every time you go live. Jesus Christ." And I almost want to write back, I guess my marketing efforts are working. I guess whatever I'm doing is working, that I can still penetrate your feed with my nonsense. And I do apologize if I'm not providing value to you, because there's so many others that really do like what I'm doing. But I think that makes me feel good that I have a troll. Yeah. I like getting it's cool.
It's great.
Shane Robottom says it, right? Once you get trolled, it's
it really is great. My favorite, and this happened yesterday even, but my favorite is when the person will circle back on they commented originally a week earlier, and then they'll comment a week later with some new findings and get all angry again. You know what I say? I will say, and I posted about this. thank you or immense gratitude for your unbelievable kindness and feedback.
I'm gonna steal that.
And then hold on, and then I say, because it's not done, and then I say, what is it? You seem like a really happy guy / gal. Good for you. God, I'm like totally butchering it, but like that's I have it like saved, and I just kind of like say that. I'll put like a heart emoji. But bottom line,
No.
it's just really kind, and I don't like. Again, I don't
Yeah,
really
what's the
have the
point of being a
energy.
dick, right?
No, doesn't really look good on you, and like
No.
you're just kind of admitting that that's the level you're on if you play right into it,
And
and
the
so
other
yeah,
yeah, the other thing this person doesn't realize is that she works and operates in my same market in New York City. And if she took a moment to see, what my background is too, there's a real thing called blacklisting. So I think it's another important thing too. I
Yeah.
mean, I work in the recruiting world in New York in digital social marketing.
Yeah.
So I think she should certainly be aware of that. But I'm going to kill him with kindness or
Yeah.
simply ignore him. So I think we might have lost
or
here.
you don't answer. That's the other thing too. That's that a lot of
Yeah,
time I
it's
won't
hard
even
for me to
answer.
do that. All I want to do is respond.
Yeah, sure, but you have more important things to.
Yeah. So I want to wrap this up here now. I was going to play this game.
Well, hold on. Well, actually, last thing. I posted about this recently too. Sorry.
Go for it.
Because this is important. Sometimes you have to consider that the trolls and the haters are sometimes they're right, and you have to really look at that and consider that if they're being relatively respectful, sometimes they are right. And I've
gotten that.
Yeah. Right. So that's important.
Because sometimes people closest to you, are when you would want them to give you real feedback, or not because they don't want to offend you. But you're right. If someone gives you actionable, constructive criticism in a respectful way, you have to look at it openly and say, hey, maybe I could be doing something better. Maybe this person's right. Maybe because I am so focused on me and what I'm doing that I'm not seeing how I sound to others, how I perceive to others. Maybe some of the things I'm saying are not resonating well.
Yeah.
And you should be able to take that as a feedback loop. But when someone is just an asshole,
Can I give you an example? This person was an asshole, but he was right. It was yesterday. Like, I'm driving my nice sports car. I got the fully loaded like orange 2019 Mustang,
wow,
convertible.
It's a loud car.
It's yeah. So and like I wasn't, I just I'm driving in the shopping center, 20 miles an hour, normal, nothing. And it's got this like boost, right? That just the air that it goes whoosh, and I hit it a little bit, and it's in like Sport Plus mode, so it sounds even louder, and like people can hear it and it echoes more. And this like probably like an 18-year-old kid, he like without even like turning to look, he does like without even seeing me though, he's like, "Oh, Mr. Big Cock," and I didn't even flinch. I was driving by and I just like my facial expression didn't even change, but I was like, "Oh, yeah, he's right. Yep, I get it. I have this." I had to like look at myself like, why do I do that? And maybe I'm just justifying it, but like I do that. It's like fun. Like I bought that car because it's fun.
Quick technical note: Hala, her computer died, and she'll catch us next time. Hala Taha, everybody. She has an awesome podcast, Young and Profiting podcast. I will connect everybody to that one. Jordan, we learned a lot today, and I think there was some real actionable stuff. And where could folks? Because you provide a ton of value in multiple places. But for anybody starting out in podcasting, Jordan's an incredible resource to really understand the nuts and bolts technically of how to launch a show, promotionally, how to build your community, how audience development, promotionally, how do you build that up to? Where can folks find more information on how to do all that fun stuff?
Sure. So a lot of times I'm not into all that self-promo stuff. It's a big sticking point. But since this is just a very podcast-related discussion, if you just invested an hour in podcasting and, you might as well invest another 52 minutes in something that's super actionable. I have this free course on podcasting. It's at jordanparis.com/course. And the first like 25 minutes of it is like making it good, right? All the technology and just making it of the utmost quality. And then the next 27 minutes are how to market it, right? So because there's no point in marketing it if it's not good. So
yeah. No, it's
JordanParis.com/course. It's there. Yeah,
exactly. So I was gonna play this game, and it's funny because it's actually called Pod Decks, and everyone knows my stance on the word pods. It's terrible because I have a podcast, but I hate engagement pods.
I know.
Anyway,
Yeah,
we're gonna play this game.
People call podcast pod. You know, how about the pod, Adam?
Yeah, how about Podfest? Podfest, right? It's the whole thing about podcast. Like Podfest.
Imagine if Podfest was about engagement groups.
You know what? That's why people ask me. They're like, "Well, why do you change your show called the Podcast?" And I go, "Because I don't want to have any relation to the word pod." Side note there. That's kind of funny. But let's play this game a little bit. So it's a deck of cards, and I've been playing this out. It's a 52 deck of cards, and I'm gonna pick a few random cards here. All right, we're gonna try this here. So, touch a card.
The one on the that one. Yeah.
All right. Oh. Okay, here we go. Here's the first question. It is, right? Because it's backwards. And would you rather go 30 days without your phone or your entire life without dessert?
Dude, that's like a hold on. 30 days without my phone or no dessert? I mean, I would want to go without my phone, and I don't really do dessert. So it doesn't really like apply too much. I do dessert like once or twice a month. Okay, I would say the phone thing. I'd rather go 30 days without my phone because I do like sweets. They're healthy, but yeah.
Oh, it's a tough one, but I love my phone. It's my biggest addiction. All right, what's your most unusual talent? It's a PG show here. What's your most unusual talent?
A former talent of mine was doing backflips. I actually did one for the first time in 2 years on the beach this past weekend.
And you lived to tell about it.
I lived to tell about it. Yeah, I did probably like 4 of them.
You didn't break your neck.
Successful 4 out of 8 times. I didn't like land on my neck the other 4 times, but I just what happens a lot of times is, or with me, I have this mental block where like I jump up and then I don't actually go. Like I just jump up and then I bail. Like I don't do anything, and you just end up jumping up. And but I did it. So I guess it's a rare-ish talent. I don't know if I have anything other that's unusual.
Yeah, I mean, I have a talent that I learned, and it's actually good timing. My wife and I are celebrating our 10-year wedding anniversary on Friday, which is pretty incredible.
Nice, man.
I love her like the day I met her. But one of my unusual talents is
and you didn't. I remember we talked about that. You didn't go on Birthright because you met her.
Yeah, you remember from the podcast. But I could open up beer bottles with my wedding ring. And the first time I did it, I was taught it by somebody who's actually not in our life anymore. But somebody taught me that, and my wife said to me, "You're going to scratch the ring." I've been doing that for 10 years consistently, at least 100 bottles of beer a year on it, and I don't have one scratch on this ring. So my wife, I say that's my unusual talent, and I'm still going to do it, and I can open up beer bottles there. And last but not least, wow, this is a good one. What would you do if you were invisible for a day?
That's a good question.
It's fun, right? This deck is cool. Why not?
I would really be this fly on the wall observing human behavior in, like, I don't know, maybe I'd take a flight to DC and be a fly on the wall in the White House. I don't know.
That's scary, man. So
but it would, the goal of the day would be to understand human behavior on a deeper level.
Good stuff. So we're going to end it on that note. We're also going to end it because we are approaching over the 1 o'clock hour. We're also going to end it because I did not bring my charger with me, and I'm at 19% on there too. But I want to thank Hala Taha. I want to thank Jordan Paris and everybody watching us at home for this fun experimental episode. Every podcast live is experimental. We're trying new things. That's what the platform is for. I love, reconnecting with my old buddies here, people that believe in me and I believe in them. And that's what it's all about. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Jordan. And everyone watching at home, remember, take your online offline. Catch us next week for the podcast live, where I will have the Mark Metry on the show next Wednesday, talking about his new book, Screw Being Shy. That should be a fun one. And asking him much deeper questions on all his Mark Metry-isms, because there's a lot to. Jordan, we'll have a sidebar on that because I want to ask your questions about what questions I should ask Mark. Really piss him off. I want to poke the bear. I want to really upset him.
Okay.
I know he's bugging out right now with the coronavirus, but everybody watching, stay safe, wash your hands, take care, and catch us next week for another great episode of the podcast. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Adam.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode jam-packed with more incredible humans. For more info, please visit www.nhptalentgroup.com.